So I know many people think it's strange, but I'm a massive animal lover and I've kept all sorts of animals myself, donkeys and all sorts of things. So commiserations, you will be missing him hugely today. But there's an interesting aspect now, Helen Mcdonald, about the post-mortem. Tell my listeners about that. Good morning.
Yes, good morning. I'm just numb and angry this morning. The first thing to say is that George Eustace needs to resign. He has overseen this mess for 4 years. And what he allowed to happen in front of the world yesterday was absolutely despicable. They dragged him and stopped him from breathing with a rope around his head and threw him into a lorry alive and took him from his home without any justification whatsoever. That was totally disproportionate, and anyone who thinks that that is acceptable behaviour is absolutely appalling. We're asking, to answer your question, for full disclosure of post-mortem. They refused to let us have an independent vet witness his post-mortem yesterday, which is, the excuse they came up with was health and safety, COVID and security reasons. There is no reason why an independent vet in PPE could not have been escorted to attend that post-mortem.
Why do you think there's resistance to allowing an independent vet to attend it?
Well, why do you think? They allege he caught TB in New Zealand 6 years ago when he caught it at a show. There's been no alpaca TB in New Zealand for over 20 years.
I mean, I'm a massive, I was a massive supporter of Geronimo, but I have to point out that the case for the prosecution is that Geronimo did positively test for PTB in 2017. I know you say the tests are flawed, but they've not just...
They weren't valid. They weren't valid, and their own expert scientists came out 2 weeks ago in court and said they've never done the trials to support what they did to Geronimo 4 years ago. So what they're trying to do now is just impress propaganda upon everyone to make it look like I have tried to save a diseased animal. That is absolutely far from the truth. Everything I have said, and I continue to say, is documented, all right? So the facts are very, very clear. And we've had Robert Jenrick wheeled out this morning. We've got Boris making inappropriate claims and trying to get sound bites about this to try and smooth over the horror that everybody witnessed yesterday. It's an absolute disgrace. There are people that need to be held to account, and everyone who was complicit in this case for the last 4 years needs to take some responsibility for what everyone had to witness yesterday. I don't believe that without independent post-mortem with photo evidence, we haven't had that. We've been denied that, but they need to produce the evidence now. I want to see a full written post-mortem. I want photographs, and I want ID, DNA evidence that what they have taken from him is from him. And I will not rest until that's been done.
When are you likely to hear the post-mortem results, Ms. McDonald?
Well, they say they did the post-mortem yesterday, so they should be able to tell me whether there is lesions or not in there by now. And we will be pressing on that point today. They will then try and culture something, lymph nodes or liver or lungs, and that might take 12 to 20 weeks.
Good Lord.
So we will see. But they will have to try and find a type from New Zealand if they're going to allege that he was infected. We know that test was flawed. We know they know that test was flawed, and they admitted to incorrectly applying protocol to Geronimo's case 4 years ago. So anything that people are spinning today is just false.
Let me ask you this. Were it, and I absolutely take on board what you're saying, but were it to be proven that Geronimo did have TB, would it, in a perverse way, actually make it slightly easier for you to take?
I don't know, because I know that he's never been exposed to TB, so it's just not something I have thought about. He is in a safe environment here. They knew they could have either retested him or kept him safe for research purposes. We had a proposal on the table, and they strung us along for a week saying, oh, yes, well, everyone's back on holiday next week. It's going to be discussed. The TB policy team have got the documents. It's all going ahead. And then what happens? Whilst they're selling us that, they're swooping down and ripping him out of his home by thugs, absolute cruel thugs. That vet had no training on camelids. He didn't even realise he was suffocating him, I don't expect. He's so ignorant. Absolutely unbelievable.
This is the picture of Geronimo with a white rope tethered around his snout. And, of course, He's having to breathe. His nostrils are flared because presumably that's how he's having to breathe.
they can only breathe through their nose. And if you obstruct the nose of an alpaca, they will suffocate. And, people, these are vets, right? These are government vets. And that guy needs holding to account for his cruelty, abject cruelty. They rounded him up and dragged him out. The police were very heavy-handed. And there was no need for any of that yesterday.
But
no need whatsoever.
What is the correct way to transport an alpaca? Presumably by some kind of halter, is it, or head harness?
Yeah. They have special alpaca head collars.
But did you resist? Did you try and did they have to use the rope because you resisted that, Miss McDonald?
I wasn't there. They came in and just ripped him out, and they came in en masse. They chased them round. They frightened them. They dragged him because they had no idea how to handle him. Now, whether somebody's there or not, they should be trained. And what happened yesterday was just abject, unbelievable, unforgivable cruelty. They caused distress and fear, and that is unacceptable.
And if, as you have always maintained, Geronimo did not have TB, and the post-mortem, however many days or weeks it takes, that does finally conclude that, again, your reaction then?
Well, that they killed a healthy animal for no good reason, and they knew that. They knew that 4 years ago, and they know that now. Christine Middlemist knows it. She even rang my vet up to ask him.
She's the chief veterinary officer, yeah.
She's the chief veterinary officer, and she's just a government spokesperson now. She's not doing her job.
Right.
She's supposed to be the chief veterinary officer.
Well, lastly, Stanley Johnson, Boris Johnson's father, of course, tried on your behalf. Nobody could have fought harder than you did, he said of you. May he, Geronimo, rest in peace. Were you surprised that Mr. Johnson Sr. didn't get further with his son on this?
It was great having Stanley on board helping, but at the end of the day, these government ministers are ignorant, and they don't listen. They've never listened. They've never listened to independent witnesses. They've obviously not listened to Stanley Johnson. What could have been done fairly under safe conditions? The government accept he was no risk to anyone. We have the best biosecurity in the country, and he's had no risk to cattle, badgers, or any other species. They knew what they did, and all they've done to try to do to me, Nick, is hold me up as an example of how not to challenge DEFRA, because they won't tolerate it.
Thank you. I hope when we speak again there has been some conclusion, because it's the not knowing must be nothing as painful as losing a beloved pet. I understand that, or a beloved animal, but it's the not knowing hurts as well. Helen Mcdonald, the owner of Geronimo, of course, until yesterday. Thank you for your time.